It's Wednesday. Woo-hoo. Almost halfway through our first week of hybrid. Good job, guys. All right, so today we're going to be looking at experiments and observational studies. We're going to start with a warm-up. Has to do with sampling and non-sampling errors. So if you want to pause the video, warm-up is everything about that line. So really there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. So if you want to pause, try them on your own, and then I'll go over them. So the first one says, which of the following are sources sampling error and which are sources a non-sampling error, and explain your answers. So the subject lies about past drug use. That would be a non-sampling error, so I'm going to use NSE. Because the error occurred not because of how you took your sample or in the process of taking the sample, picking the people to do the survey, but it's response bias, which is a non-sampling error because the person lied. And that has nothing to do with the person creating the survey and the sample. B, a typing error is made in recording the data. That's also a non-sampling error. Again, has nothing to do with taking the sample, just a mistake as people are inputting data. And C, data are gathered by asking people to mail in a coupon printed in a newspaper. That would be a sampling error because they're asking people to mail in a coupon. That's a poor sampling method. It's voluntary response. All right, and then the other part of the warm-up. Come on. Sorry, apparently I can't read whether you guys are here or not. Comment on each of the following as a potential sample survey question. Is the question clear? Is it slanted toward a desired response? Which of the following best respond? Oh my gosh. I'm going to start over. I can do this. Which of the following best represents your opinion on gun control? I, the government should confiscate our guns. I, we have the right to keep and bear arms. So there are two parts to this. Is the question clear? Yeah, I would say the question's clear. It's very clear what they're asking. They're asking your opinion on gun control. So it's clear, but it is slanted. So the first option, the government should confiscate, this tends to have a negative connotation. And it's more like saying that it's not your choice, that you're being told. Kind of like, it makes me think of a parent with a kid. Like my son, when I see his report card, if he has C's or lower, I'm going to confiscate his Xbox. It's kind of like a punishment word. So it's clear, but it is definitely slanted towards the right to bear arms. And then B. No, I can't write. Right. B says, a freeze in nuclear weapons should be favored because it would begin a much-needed process to stop everyone in the world from building nuclear weapons now and reduce the possibility of nuclear war in the future. Do you agree or disagree? This is why I don't teach English. Oh goodness. That is a huge, long, run-on sentence, which, at least for me, a non-English person, not clear at all. I think it has to do with the fact that they want nuclear weapons to not be like around, but it's not very clear. So definitely not clear. But I'm like I said, I think they're pushing you towards a freeze should be favored, much needed process to stop, reduce the possibility of nuclear war. So it's definitely slanted towards not having nuclear weapons, even though it's I had a teacher once tell me that he was a psychology teacher, and he told me to just write in circles, and I feel like that's what this is doing. He said just write in circles, like start with your point and give some information background and some justification for it and come back to it and do it again and come back to it. And I feel like that's what this is doing. Just how many different ways could they say the same thing about no nuclear weapons? So hopefully that made sense. And that's our warm-up. Today's notes should be fairly short. Like I said, we're going to look at the difference between observational studies and experiments. I took this one off. We're going to do that tomorrow on Thursday because otherwise this lesson was too long. So really we're just going to focus on experiments and observational studies. So last year, not last year, 3 years ago, North offered an after school, not really after school, it was during 8th period, ACT prep class that students could volunteer to take. I actually taught it, and it wasn't just ACT, it was SAT, but we're, for the sake of this, going to assume ACT. So 44 students took the course and then took the ACT. The average ACT score for this group was 23.2. The average ACT score for all students who did not take the prep class was 21.4. Can you conclude that taking the prep course will cause a student's ACT score to increase? So just think about that for a minute. Do you think the ACT prep class is the reason why their scores were higher? If you said no, you're right. We cannot assume that it's only the ACT prep class. So first of all, the prep course was voluntary response. Kids who wanted to take it could sign up for it. Some kids signed up for it, never showed up because when 8th period rolled around, they were like, do I really want to stay or do I want to go hang out with my friends? And then, of course, there were the few that were there because their parents told them to be there. So it's a poor sampling method. So it's probably not a good representation of the entire population. And another, we're going to get into that here. So besides voluntary response, what are some lurking variables? What I was going to say is, the kids that choose to take an extra class that they don't get credit for just to improve their test scores, they have some intrinsic motivation that not all students have. And if they're willing to give up time to take an extra class, to get ready for a test, they're probably willing to give up some time to just study at home. And they may be, trying to get into a really elite school and really pushing themselves. So intelligence is another lurking variable. It could be somebody who has huge test anxiety, and so they thought taking the prep course might help them to relieve some of that anxiety. There's so many different lurking variables going on here. So how could we show that the ACT prep class causation? How could we show that the ACT prep class caused the increase in the score? And the only way we could do that is to carefully, and I put carefully in all caps, because we talked about how samples can easily be ruined. So we have to carefully design an experiment. Surveys do not show causation. The only way you can have causation is through an experiment. So now we're going to move into some definitions of what makes something an experiment. And if it's not an experiment, then we'll just call it an observational study. So, like I said, definitions. Like, this is my least favorite unit because there's so much just words. So, observing individuals and measuring variables of interest, but without attempting to influence the responses, is called observational studies. Observational. Ow, that was loud. Studies. Beep, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. All right. Deliberately imposing a treatment. That's the key phrase right there. Deliberately imposing a treatment on individuals and then measuring their responses is called an experiment. The advantage of an experiment over an observational study is that it allows you to show causation. Cause and effect. A variable that is not among the explanatory or response variables in a study, but that may influence the response variable, is called a lurking or confounding variable. The lurking, confounding, they'll be used interchangeably. And I guess I should specify explanatory variable. That's your X, the independent variable. Let's see. I guess I can write it. So this is X. It's the independent one. And then the response is Y. Or a dependent variable, because our response depends on what's happening. So, and Y depends on X in equations. Lurking, confounding variable. Lurking variables often lead to confounding, hence why you can use them interchangeably. And I have a picture. It's not a very pretty picture. I say all the time I don't teach English for a reason, while I also don't teach art for a reason. Alright, so we're going to use that whole ACT prep, ACT score idea. So let's see. I think I'll go with this color. So we have the ACT prep class, right? And then we have the ACT scores. And a lot of people go, oh yeah, the ACT prep, that causes scores to go up. But that's wrong. We can't, like I said, we can't assume causation. We can say that they're correlated, meaning there's some sort of relationship or association, but we can't say that this causes that, because we have all these other things acting on the ACT scores, like motivation and intelligence and testing anxiety. Kids who attend school regularly probably are going to have higher ACT scores. Probably. Can't assume that. Anxiety, attendance. Sleep the night before. And there's all sorts of things that could really be affecting those ACT scores, and we can't assume it's just the ACT prep class. So some language about experiments, and tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to spend a lot more time talking about experiments too. So we'll get more in depth, and we'll actually design some experiments tomorrow. Woo-hoo, fun! I'd say that's as fun as it gets for this unit. So when it comes to experiments, a specific condition applied to individuals in an experiment is called the treatment. The treatment. Sounds like it should be. The treatment. When I record these videos, I get kind of weird because I'm talking to myself. Sorry. The individuals to which treatments are applied are called experimental units. I like that one too. Man, this pen is brand new and it is not wanting to work. Experimental units. When the units are human beings, we call them subjects. The explanatory variables in an experiment are often called factors. Just like math to change names, we know. It's no longer the independent variable, now it's the explanatory variable, and by the way, we might call it a factor. And each factor may have several different levels. So now we're going to look at a problem that will be similar to what you see for your homework today. So, does reducing screen brightness, actually I should say two of them. There's two of them. Does reducing screen brightness increase battery life in laptop computers? To find out, researchers obtained 30 new laptops of the same brand. They chose 15 of the computers at random and adjusted their screens to the brightest setting. The other 15 laptop screens were left at the default setting, moderate brightness. Researchers then measured how long each machine's battery lasted. Was this an observational study or an experiment? So this would be an experiment because they imposed a treatment. So they took half of the computers and left them at the default setting. But then the other 15 computers, they adjusted their screens. So they imposed a treatment on those 15 computers. So it's an experiment because treatment was imposed. And I'm really sad I'm not here to do this one with you guys because I really like hearing your answers to this. Usually on this question I go around and I actually survey you guys on who eats dinner with their family and who doesn't. It's always interesting to me to hear who does and doesn't. So, does eating dinner with their families improve students' academic performances? According to an ABC News article, Teenagers who eat with their families at least 5 times a week are more likely to get better grades in school. This finding was based on a sample survey conducted by researchers at Columbia University. Was this an observational study or an experiment? This is an observational study because they just sent out a survey, said, hey, do you eat dinner with your family? And how many times do you eat dinner with your family per week? So there was no treatment imposed on the families. They just said what's going on. They observed. They collected data. So observational study. No treatment imposed. What are the explanatory and response variables? So remember, explanatory is the X, it's independent. The response is Y, it's dependent, changes based on X. So just to reiterate, I didn't want to put I didn't want to put a dash there. So X, the independent, and then Y, the dependent. So the response, it would be grades, the better grades. And then they say, based on their survey, that eating dinner with family is what improves the academic performance. So our explanatory would be eating with fam, and our response would be better grades. But really, it's just their grades. But we assume they're going to be better based on the data. And then the last question, explain clearly why such a study cannot establish cause and effect relationship. Suggest a lurking variable that may be confounded with whether families eat dinner together. So, we can't establish cause and effect because it's not an experiment. So, can't establish cause and effect because not an experiment. And usually I would ask you guys to give me some lurking variables, but I don't get to today. So let's see. I eat family. I eat my family. Yeah. My family eats dinner together. No phones allowed at the table. My husband likes to try and break that rule a lot. But I get mad at him. I've even actually taken his phone. So I don't know about all families that eat together, but I know in our family that I go, hey, Lucas, how'd school go today? What did you learn about? What was your favorite class today? And he's in 8th grade. And then with my daughter, who's in kindergarten, I ask her about school, like, what was your favorite thing? Did you do math? So to me, eating dinner together kind of, it gives me a reason, not a reason, I don't know. We're sitting there and who wants to eat in silence? That's just weird. So I fill it with questions. So I guess it opens the line of communication. Parents who are home at dinner may have more like study 8 to 4 like me, or 9 to 5 jobs, which may influence socioeconomic status. If parents have to work, like if a parent is a server at a restaurant, they would probably have worked during the dinner time. I know I had one student 2 years ago, and he told me that his family never even ate together on holidays, and it just made me so sad. And then he told me that he himself, he was a senior in high school, his mom, his dad, and his sister, they were all servers at restaurants, and so of course, you know, the times that the restaurants need them, it's dinner time. So then it made a little more sense. I still felt sad for him though. So the type of job, which could lead to socioeconomic status, I don't know. I also, at dinner time, I say, hey, do you still have homework? More so with my 8th grader than my kindergartner. Hey, did you get your homework done? Do you need help on your homework? Have you turned it in, especially this year? He's like, yeah, I did it. Okay, well, did you actually submit it on Canvas? No. Why would you do it without submitting it? Sorry. Homework, reminder. I mean, there's lots of different things. But I'll be done now, because you guys are like, come on, this is the last problem. Stop talking so the video's over. Well, there you go. Video's over. Work on your homework. I'll see you guys tomorrow.